everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Attachment Theory in Action podcast. I am really excited to have you join me today. We have a couple of wonderful guests who will be joining us to talk about everything with regards foster and adoptive work with caregivers and their journey to create support and help for families in South Carolina. I hope that you will join me in welcoming my two guests. So today I have Amie Cooper and Cindy Painter from Flourishing Families of South Carolina joining me. Amie is the founder and executive director of Flourishing Families, a nonprofit organization dedicated to offering hope, healing, and holistic support to families impacted by childhood trauma. With both personal and professional experience in foster care, adoption, and kinship caregiving, Amie leads with profound empathy, authenticity, and insight as she walks alongside caregivers raising children from hard places. Amie is a TBRI practitioner trained through the Karen Purvis Institute of Child Development and integrates these principles across all programming to promote safety, attachment, and regulation for children and caregivers alike. Cindy has a bachelor's degree in psychology from Winthrop University and her master's in counseling from Webster University. She has worked with all kinds of families as a director of a daycare and children's ministry. Her passion for helping adoptive families began with the adoption of her youngest son. That passion led her to start her career as a licensed professional counselor and become a TBRI practitioner to better help fostering and other adoptive families. Welcome, Amie and Cindy. I'm so glad to have you guys here on the podcast.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. It's so good to be here.
I just know that this conversation is going to be wonderful. You both have a wealth of experience and life stories to bring to this conversation, and I know that our listeners are absolutely going to walk away with either their wheels turning. I always leave with my wheels turning and thoughts and questions coming up. And they're going to leave with just extra knowledge and expertise based on what you guys are going to bring to this. So I'm so grateful that you're here. My regular listeners know that I always start with the same question for all of my guests, just because this is about attachment. And that question is there anything or experience from your early childhood, early life, or even in your early career that you feel helped drive you to the work that you do today? Just tell us about your story and how you got to where you are today. And anyone can go first.
Thanks, Kirsty. I think for me, of course, there are pieces of my early childhood that shape the way that I relate to others in relationships. And really, I think for me, I started out with that kind of um, rose colored glasses, want to save the world, want to rescue others mentality in coming into this work, and also in coming into parenting. My husband and I became foster parents pretty young, shortly after marriage in our early 20s, and we thought we had a lot to offer, and we did. And we also had a lot to learn. And so I think for me, a lot of the work that I do surrounding attachment and supporting families who are navigating parenting children who've had disrupted attachment comes from my own feeling like a failure, honestly. Bringing children home and trying traditional parenting approaches and feeling like I was in way over my head. So for me, I think the vulnerability that I experienced and the overwhelm in wanting to do a good thing and not being equipped is what leads me to work with other caregivers in similar situations.
Okay, okay. Thank you. And Cindy, what about you? Tell us a bit about your story.
Well, I grew up in ministry. My dad was a pastor of a church, so we moved around a lot, and I really think that's where it really started this value of people and getting to know people and their story and their wounds, their pain, and that healing. So um, we were kind of the house that always everybody was welcome. And so when I grew up, I always wanted to do counseling. I'm a counselor, and uh, things change in life that kind of take you off that path sometimes. So we got a little derailed as far as me wanting to be a counselor from the start, but it was starting the family, had some infertility issues, which then led us to adoption. And when we adopted our son, um, there was no help. There was no
Mhm.
one around. All of our friends were adopting, but so we had a tribe, we had people, but there were no services, honestly, for us. And it was awful. It was isolating. It was just terrible. And our son had real mental health issues and no one knew. They knew how to treat mental illness. They didn't know how to treat attachment wounds and mental illness. So we were stuck. We were stuck. And that's what led me to finally finish getting my license and say, okay, we have to do something because anything has to be better than this. And I want to make sure other families have options and we can bring some healing.
Amy, would you say that that is kind of in line with your experience too, like that feeling of kind of isolation and there's resources, but not for our situation?
Absolutely. I think so early on we were living in Indiana. Currently we live in South Carolina, and actually we had a very different experience in Indiana. Post-adoption services were readily available. I was hesitant to ask for help because I was a professional in the field. And so I felt
Mm.
like I should already know how to help my children because I was working in child welfare professionally. I had a degree in child and family development. And so I think I carried a lot of shame in asking for help. When I finally did ask for help, it was readily available. And that's when we were introduced through post adoption support to trust based relational intervention, TBRI, and Dr. Karen Purvis. And through post adoption services, we were able to go hear her speak live and hear from other families through the Empowered to Connect conference at the time. And really, that sense of isolation
Hmm.
went away. And my first thought was, why didn't anyone tell us sooner
Hmm.
about attachment, about trauma, about how that changes the way that you need to approach your relationship with your children? And it's so, of course, it wasn't easy just having that information, but there was a real weight lifted in knowing there was science and there were answers for what was happening in our home.
Hmm. Um, and if we could just take a moment for Dr. Karen Purvis because she was just absolutely legendary in this work and bringing to light what you're talking about. You know that there's real reasons for this, and there are real and not always easy, as you said, ways to support a child that may be experiencing this and a family that's experiencing this. And our even our work at Chaddock is a lot of it is founded in her work as well. And so, just to spare a moment for her. And before we move forward too much, I want to sit with for a minute just those feelings that you both expressed about feeling kind of like a failure, like I failed, and that kind of hopelessness, because I don't think that there's enough attention paid to that. Because if there was, we wouldn't be having this conversation about a lack of resources, right? You know, when I think about becoming a mother, I I again work in the field with kids, right? I know how kids develop, and yet I still felt there were times where I was failing. Now I put myself in your shoes and think about, you know, I had access to resources or a fair amount of resources, but I can't imagine how hard it is for some parents and families and caregivers to go into this with the best intention and find that there's no support there. I mean, that's terrifying to think about. So,
Absolutely.
and
And
you go ahead, Amy.
that's the common theme that we found in the work that we do is serving foster and adoptive and kinship families is that when you don't have words to name what's going on in your home, you feel so overwhelmed, so discouraged, and yet most of the parents, despite not having resources, we are still out here advocating and pushing and trying with what little we have to find a way. And so as we've met more and more families, we've seen that common theme of, yes, there might be a feeling of hopelessness, but families are quite committed. Families who adopt, families who bring in children through foster care and kinship care, they generally will push through with what little resources are given and try the best they can to give their all to a child. And often that leaves them feeling so depleted of energy, because not only are they trying to parent this child in the home, they're trying to navigate systems that aren't set up to meet the needs of their family.
Cindy, would you say you felt that was your experience?
Oh, yes. And I think the isolation when you step into adoption and it's not, honeymoon like,
Mm-hmm.
when love is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you also only see it from your little perspective. So I I think doing the work we do now, which is statewide work, has been also very eye-opening for me, because it's easy to say, well, this is just our school that doesn't understand. Oh, this is just our church that doesn't really get, we can't just pray this away,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, whatever the system is. Oh, it's just our worker, or it's just, but now I see that it's a systemic issue. This is, and I really, some of the hope I like to bring parents is, you're not crazy. This is not you. Um, stick with it. Now, thankfully, with Flourishing Families, we can come alongside them and say, you're not alone. And as we are helping families walk through that, we are also working kind of behind those scenes systemically with
Mm-hmm.
agencies and with groups to help them understand attachment matters. This is not just about behavior and changing behavior, because that doesn't work. It does not
Mm-hmm.
work. I think Dr. Purvis used to say that you could get behavior change, but without the connection, it's not going to last. You're not really affecting that child in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, yes, very much the same. And it's comforting to know it wasn't just my experience. But at the same time, it's overwhelming to think everybody's struggling like this. We need to do something.
Mm-hmm. And you bring up a good point, Cindy, is that attachment matters, which we know this, the three of us know this. But I, it's taken me a long time professionally to get to a point where and even then having my own child adds another layer of understanding to attachment. And I have to remind myself that not everybody knows this stuff, right? And attachment is such an abstract concept that you cannot. I mean, yes, there's the MIM and there's the adult attachment style interview and so on. So there are ways to measure it, but it's so abstract for somebody outside of this field to wrap their head around why love isn't enough. And as professionals, we really have to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody who doesn't have any of this knowledge at all to try and, meet them where they're at with grace. And not think, well, if you just did this or if you just did that, this would change.
Right. It's multi-layered. And one of the things we really believe in at Flourishing Families is that attachment matters in all relationships, not just the parent-child relationship or
Mhm.
the caregiver-child relationship. A lot of people think, oh, TBRI, that's for parents, or attachment, that's something you do with parents and children. And yes, of course, that's the most critical place that we need attachment focused interventions. However, systemically, we need attachment focused interventions. We need
Mhm.
to relate to the other adults who are in this system, showing up with good intentions, just like we did in the beginning, right, Cindy? who don't have the tools or the knowledge they need, and to know they are doing the best they can with the tools they have. And if we can create felt safety among professionals, if we can create felt safety among parents and professionals, we can go a lot further in healing for the child when the adults are relating to one another in a way that is more attuned,
Mm-hmm.
more empowering. When we approach corrections that need to happen within our work with, how can we have a better solution rather than you did this wrong?
Mm-hmm.
It just takes us so much further.
So what I'm hearing you saying is we need to be aware of the attachment relationship that we are having with the caregiver or parent that we're supporting, with our coworkers, that and you mentioned this in our pre-podcast chat about being that secure base for those parents and caregivers that you're working with. Um, Cindy, tell us a bit, what does that look like when you go in alongside those parents and caregivers to be that secure base? Tell us about that.
So at Flourishing Families, we have different levels of services that we offer, but our primary services that we do are family coaching. So we can spend up to a year with a family, training them in TBRI, coming inside their home, working with them hands-on to show them how to nurture, do these techniques, and build the skill set, so they feel empowered to parent from a trauma lens, as well. And then in that, the best way we have found to do that is not to come in and write directly with the child. We are there to coach the parent, and so we are there to build a relationship with that parent as well. And there's many times, we are feeling like this is not going anywhere. It's like we need to work on this attachment and this connection with this parent. And because it is a relationship, right? It's us being attuned to that parent. And when I can see that a parent is struggling, I can't sit down and teach them skills just like I can't with a child and expect them to take it in. So sometimes we have to regulate a parent and
Mm-hmm.
get them in a good headspace so that they are open. And so I think all of that is primarily what we do. We let them know that they're not alone, and we come in to kind of teach them how to be in a healthy relationship. We all have relationship wounds, and if they've never dealt with them,
Mm-hmm.
and these kids are going to make that very clear. And so when we walk into a home, and even if it's trying to schedule, some parents need our services, some parents say they want our services, but even scheduling can be hard. And it's like, whoa, right? They're not even ready
Mm-hmm.
yet. And so I've had parents that wouldn't even sit near me. Um, like even as we were training, they're like across the room. And it was so obvious that there was something going on where one parent was like on the gas pedal and one parent was on the brake. And it was like, I don't even need to meet the child right now. We need to, get you guys together. Because that's the other thing. And I tell most of the couples I work with that your relationship matters between the
Mm-hmm.
two of you, because this child needs a safe, secure foundation and base. They need to know that you guys are good. Doesn't mean that they're, people divorce for different reasons, and we work with divorced families even. Um, but they need to know you guys are solid and that you're parenting or co-parenting these kids together and
Mm-hmm.
on the same page, and give that consistency. And so we try to do that and show up for our parents as well. Um, in fact, I had a mom last week, and I'm like, you can text me anytime,
Mm-hmm.
and so we are trying to give yeses, like we want the parents to give the kids. We are like, yes, we can do that as much as we can.
Mm-hmm.
And just really meet the need of that parent first so that they can be that for their child. I don't need, as a counselor or even as a family coach with Flourishing Families, I don't need that child to connect and bond with me as their permanent foundation. I need to give that example and then mentor those parents into being that for that child.
You're speaking my language, Cindy. I mean, this is what we preach at Chaddock for sure, which is why the three of us have even connected, I think, because that's the exact approach that we have. We we don't always have the same luxury as you guys have to go into the home, but we wish that we could with the kiddos that we serve residentially at least. But I truly agree with you that, and it not in every case. I would say in a community setting, we've got traumatized people raising traumatized people. That's not always the case in a foster and adoption setting necessarily, but as you pointed out, and we have this saying at Chaddock that if you don't work your issues, the kids are going to work them for you, right? And so and I also love what you said, Cindy, that you don't need the child to build that relationship with you because you maybe might see that child once a week for an hour. That I mean, there, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say there's really no point in that child building that relationship with you. We want them to build it with the adults. And so I love that your program allows you guys to go in and do that work and be that base for a parent or caregiver to show up in the way that they're showing up. I would say that most of them are in their back brain. They are feeling like a failure, feeling overwhelmed. They have no felt safety in that system that they can be honest and say, I think I'm failing, or I don't have a lot of joy in this relationship with this child right now. I mean, I think that that would be a very scary thing for a foster or adoptive parent to say. I mean, they would think, if I say this, does that mean the child's going to get taken away or placed somewhere else? Amie, what are you thinking about?
That leads me to why lived experience is critical in our family coaching model. Each of our family coaches on our team at Flourishing Families is a foster, adoptive, or kinship parent themselves. Because the ability to say, I feel like a failure, or I don't want to look at my child today,
Hmm.
and to have a head nod like you're giving, and to have a yes, I've been there, and to be that safe, secure base that that parent can come to when they go out and explore this new parenting way and it's hard, and they can come back to us for reassurance. They can come back to us to say, we get it, yes, and still you're a good mama.
Hmm.
Look at all the
Hmm.
ways you are showing up. Look at all the ways you are fighting for your kiddo. Look at all the ways that you are connecting, even if it's hard right now. And so we have found, yes, TBRI as our primary intervention is critical. And the other piece is that lived experience of having a safe person that can really attune to what you're feeling because we've experienced it, we've lived it.
Hmm.
And not even just for families in crisis. We also serve families when they're waiting to be matched, brand new adoptive families, and they have so many questions and anxieties and concerns. And asking those to the adoption worker who's just come in and done a home study, and you feel like I've had to present my very best self because I
Hmm.
want you to approve me to match with a child, there's more felt safety in coming to another adoptive parent and saying, hey, when you went through this, what was that like? Did you
Hmm.
have these doubts? Did you have these questions? And so that felt safety from before the child is placed in the home all the way through post permanency is what we offer out of our own lived experience and professional training.
I love that. I love that so much. And the word that you said that's sticking with me is that attunement piece, right? Because you are creating that safe space for them to verbalize doubts, fears, anxieties. But if the attunement piece is there, they might not even have to verbalize it to know that you get them, right? That because of that lived experience. And you're absolutely right that, somebody who has not had that lived experience is that's going to be harder for them to really provide that genuine attunement. And that's okay. It's okay as long as
Mm-hmm.
it's acknowledged. And so I really do love that that is a piece of your program that, all of your staff do have that lived experience. It's absolutely vital. Um, so what do you, aside from the resources, and this is a question for both of you, but what specifically maybe do you wish you had known before entering into the world of foster and adoption? Everything, probably.
That's a wide open question. I think no matter how prepared an adoptive parent becomes through obtaining training and resources and building a support system and having realistic expectations, there's still a major difference in what I think it will be like and what it's actually like. And I do think there's some pressure to say, oh, I love all my children the same, or it's the same regardless. Cindy and I both are biological mothers and adoptive mothers. And and I've had children come home at different ages. You know, at the oldest age, my daughter came home at 15. She lived nearly her entire childhood apart from me. And so forming an attachment with a 15-year-old is very different than forming an attachment with your child while you're pregnant, right? And
Mhm.
so I think acknowledging and knowing in advance that it's okay that each experience is different and individualized, and it's really about that relationship that you're building and not measuring up to a standard. And oftentimes, we as moms, it's the standard we put in our own mind.
Mhm.
Because I do think we prepare families in training, like it's going to be different. However, until you experience it, you don't know. So I think for me, one of the biggest pieces is just adjusting my own expectations, how much I would have to adjust my own expectations of what being a good mom means in this
Mm.
dynamic.
And we get that too from TBRI, where we set the bar. And I think with our families that are waiting for replacement or are brand new to parenting in general, let alone being an adoptive parent, we can come in and help them set the bar appropriately, not just with their child, but with the system. It's a lot of us have really hard things we've been through with our adoptive kids, and yet we can give them hope and prepare them that, yeah, it's not always going to be this honeymoon phase that we're in, or that you're going to go through. It'll seem like, well, this is easy, this is great. But children get older. When they hit adolescence, it gets a lot harder, I think, for most. And that's when you've got the developmental piece plus that past trauma, and things start coming online neurologically that the child is like, wait, what? I need more information. And so we do help prepare parents as far as you're doing great, but these are the things that might come down the road. Let's just prepare the path now so that when you get there, that'll go smoother. I think is vital. And that's one of the things I would say for me that I wish I had known was how to advocate for my child, because I did not know. I didn't
Mhm.
know there were any services anywhere. I couldn't find them when I did try, but I didn't know how to speak their language either. I did.
Mhm.
And so it helps when someone's been there to say, okay, yeah, we do have services. Our state does have a post-adoption services thing. I didn't know that existed. I don't know if that's new. I'm older. I adopted a long time ago, so maybe not. But nobody ever checked in. I'm so glad we have that in our state, and it's so great to work with them and to be able to say, this is what this family needs and help prepare them because they don't know how to advocate. I have a mama that's never been a parent, and so how does she know how to advocate with that school system? And so just we do that too. We will go with them to school meetings and just help them understand we're not working in opposition with teachers and schools. You can work with them. This is how, we need to do it. And even with doctors and things like that. Just helping them know how to advocate and what services are available. I think we have a lot of well-intentioned, good people doing good work,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to know where that is so we can get people, their needs met. Because every family is different, every child is different. So,
And frustratingly, every state is different, and oftentimes the smaller systems within the state are different as well. And so, again, I can only imagine, being a caregiver or a parent and already feeling overwhelmed because of maybe behaviors or disconnection in the home, and then trying to navigate a system while I'm in back brain. And Cindy, you mentioned earlier about scheduling. And we often experience that with, well, we would, especially if we were doing outpatient services similar to what you guys are doing, in that people are in their back brain so much that it's hard to do simple things like schedule an appointment. I'm so overwhelmed that that's just another thing that I can't manage right now. So then to have to think about, how do I even navigate an entire state system to get support for my child? And so, really appreciating that that's another piece of the puzzle that you guys are helping with. And I'm even thinking about people who are outside of the state. Obviously, they can contact you, but they can't access your services. But people can at least reach out and say, hey, what would you do if this was in my state? Who could I find in my state that might be doing something similar to you? So maybe Flourishing Families needs to expand into other states. Just a side note there. Um, um, what else was I thinking now? You guys had made me see, this is what happens. I say to this to my guests, my wheels start turning. Go ahead, Amie. I
It's
see you
leading
got a
me
thought.
somewhere. It's leading me somewhere.
Go for
So
it.
that need for common language and
Mm,
understanding that we are working toward the same goal, even though we have different lenses we're looking through, right? The school's looking through a different lens and a different set of policies and procedures and laws. So are the child welfare workers. So are the mental health providers. So are the families, right? And
mm,
so we have put together a statewide training on adoption that brings all the players together, the clinicians, the adoptive families, the ones who've already adopted, the ones who are not yet finalized and they're still in the fostering phase, and the ones who are not yet um, matched with a child to bring home, as well as all of our child welfare adoption professionals, their supervisors, state level leaders, and then the private providers like Flourishing Families. We come together once a year for 2 days and we attend a training that is aligned with trauma focused, attachment based interventions and gets us in the same room to remember that we are on the same team. And
mhm,
of course, we don't have all the resources and all the solutions in our state to fit every need. And yet we're working together to get there. We're identifying the needs. Part of TBRI is the mantra: see the need, meet the need, find a way. If not you, then who? And we just
mm.
live that out here at Flourishing Families. We say, if we don't have a solution, let's get together. Let's find a way. Let's get the people in the room that are invested in seeing our families and children do better. And let's work it. Let's brainstorm it. Let's bring in professionals from other states, which we do. Let's bring in those with experience, adoptees, because we know there's always more to learn and we can always do better. We're not, just like Cindy said, raising and lowering the bar. We've got to keep raising the bar as a system and saying,
Mhm.
yes, we're doing better. And what's the next level we can go to for better outcomes?
And I really, to me, that's a piece of attachment as in within the system is coming together, seeing each other's strengths and challenges, and meeting each other there and helping each other move forward as a secure base for each other.
Right.
I see your skills, I see your skills, I see each of our challenges. Now, how can we best support each other from where we are? And so I love that you brought that up at the beginning, Amie. I think it was you, about attachment in the system.
Mhm.
We need felt safety within the system. We need to be able to say, hey, I did a great job at this piece, but I'm really struggling over here. Now, who can help me with that? And I love that you brought up your conference, the Meet the Need conference, and we will be sure to put a link to that in our show notes. Um, so I'm gonna take a okay. So when you see an understanding of attachment in the world of foster and adoption, and maybe even in child welfare, what do you see change? What changes? I mean, there are a few obvious ones, but maybe from your perspectives, what do you see change when there is a true understanding of trauma and attachment?
I say everything. I mean, it really is everything, whether it, again, whether we're talking about a professional working with this population or whether we're talking about a mama and a daddy just trying to do best by a child, I see them become curious. I
Mm,
see curiosity go up. I see compassion go up. Um, they start thinking, oh, maybe this behavior is trying to tell us something. And if we can meet that need, we don't have to bring in all the heavy stuff on the behavior.
mm,
I see that in the systems we've been able to reach and teach about attachment, the same thing. It opens up everybody to curiosity. How can we meet the need of these families? Because I work from a mindset that everybody's doing the best that they can with what they have. And if we can keep everybody curious, that's when creativity starts to kick in. I don't have to know everything. We just need everybody in that room, like Amie said, so that we can meet all those needs. And when I was trained as a practitioner, Dr. Cross told me that when I thanked him for his work in creating TBRI with Dr. Purvis. And he said it really does, once you start doing TBRI, he said it just becomes who you are. It's like
mm,
DNA. And then you're that way with every person in your life, not just your
mm,
kid. You're with that with your spouse, you're with that with your employees and employer, and then systems. And so we see that benefit. So it's not just about the child. We're trying to create systems that not only value attachment, but they are better so that these workers, we love our caseworkers in our state. And we love being with them every year at our conference. They're so fun and they want to help. And so we want to give them the tools, but we also want them to be in an environment, as any system, where you can speak, where you have voice, where you
mm,
feel safe. And Amie has created that in our workplace at Flourishing Families. And so we see that it works. We can see that, oh, it's amazing how creative our staff is. I'm all blown away every week. But it's like, I didn't even think that. But when you have room to think that way and to share, and you've got voice, which is what we want these kids to
mm,
have too, I mean, it does. It changes everything. There's really no
mhm.
limit.
That, that's the exact approach that we use in our organization too. And we recognize that people cannot be functioning at their absolute like maximum capability if they're in their back brain, if they are not regulated, if they don't have that felt safety. And so I love hearing that your employees have that so that they can be creative. They can come to you with new ideas. They can think outside of the box when addressing challenges with the system. Um, and uh, oh, Cindy, you said something else and now it's gone from my mind completely. Curiosity. I love that that was the word that you used. Because that's how you're right. It becomes part of who you are and how you show up. You lead with the question, like, what's going on here? What's the need beneath that behavior versus oh, I see this behavior, whatever that may be, whether it's in a child, in a caregiver, in someone in the system, you start asking questions out of curiosity rather than just being defensive about the behavior that's in front of you. And it makes such a big difference. I approach people so differently now than I did probably 15 years ago when I didn't have all of this knowledge. Um, it doesn't make it easy all the time. And we still make mistakes, and we still have to kind of backtrack and say, "Oh, I didn't say that the right way, or I misinterpreted that." But it's a very firm starting point for being able to meet people where they are, for sure.
And
Amie,
that's the
go ahead.
value.
Hmm.
That's the value of rupture and repair
Hmm.
is that in all relationships, that are growing, that are deepening, that are strengthening, you're going to have breaks. You're going to have ruptures. You're going to have miscommunications, or you're going to know the skill you're supposed to use and you're going to be operating out of your back brain and you're going to do a skill out of your survival response.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to go back, as a leader, as the founder and director of an organization, I have to constantly come back to my team and say, hey, I got that wrong. I hear your feedback. I want to repair that. And I want you to hold me accountable for that, because even though I have this vision of living out TBRI, and I think this is something that's so important, whether it's TBRI or DTAP, as we're getting into your training as clinicians, recognizing that the relationship is the most important thing. And so it's not about, am I getting it right all the time, so that makes me a good leader? It's about, am I a safe base for my team? Am I willing to admit when I get it wrong and go back and repair a relationship with a staff member? Am I willing to say, hey, we chased that idea down and it didn't go anywhere. And I'm so sorry you poured your time and energy into that as a team, and we have to pivot, rather than saying, it is what it is and we're changing and let's move on. Staff retention is massive for us at Flourishing Families. And when staff leave, it's generally because they need to prioritize their families, and we consider that a win, because that's a win in attachment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. Just this happens to me every so often, ladies. I'm just like, my brain is just can't keep up with the conversation. I think that for me, where my head was going was thinking about what changes when attachment is understood, is that and you guys have kind of alluded to this, but it creates space for people to grow and progress. And then the other thing that I was thinking, now it's come back to me, was it I agree that it really does need to start from the top down. We have to see leaders, whether it's within an organization or at the state level, um, starting to work this way first, showing up in a different way. But there also has to be a level of commitment from the chain, right? From staff, from colleagues, from coworkers, from parents and caregivers, that there's a level of commitment that I'm going to try and do this as well. I might not be as practiced as the leaders should be, but I'm going to try and get there as well. Because I feel that there's some movement, and I'm thinking about it from the parenting perspective of we've become a little too gentle, and there's this misconception that if we're meeting people where they're at, if we're being a secure base, if we're providing a foundation of felt safety, that we're allowing them to get away with things, to behave in ways that aren't acceptable. And that's really not the case. It's, I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to support you with kindness and firmness, right? With structure as well. Have you guys seen that in your work? You're nodding your head, so I'm assuming yes.
That's the balance of structure and nurture, right?
Absolutely.
If we give too much nurture when a child or an adult or a system, right, needs structure, then we take away the opportunity to learn and grow, just like what you were saying. And again, that's coming from Dr. Purvis. I want to make sure I always, lean back on who it came from. But that's eye-opening to know that if we give nurture and nurture and nurture and nurture and structure lags, we're not going to grow. We're not going to be able to raise the bar, as we've mentioned, and get to the next level that we're capable of, or see that creativity, or find solutions that are needed. So we have to make sure that as we increase nurture, we increase structure. As we increase structure, we increase nurture. And so that's where that relationship is so important. When I know the names of people in other organizations who are making decisions and who are in leadership, that matters versus when I just read a press release about something that happened at DSS and a policy change, right? It's different when I can say, yeah, that's hard to understand. And I know, I'm not going to name drop on here, but I know the names of the people making those decisions and I trust them. And I recognize they're working within a system that limits the way they can shift and move, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than just lashing out and saying, well, it shouldn't be that way. Well, that's where that structure and nurture come together. I can say, I know that person. So that's the nurture side. And then the structure can be, I know their phone number. I know their email address. I can pick up the phone and call. I can ask for a meeting. I can say, hey, can we talk about this? We have some input. And they listen because they trust us. We have this mutually trusting relationship. And so I think that's where the structure and nurture comes together, is also with accountability, right? Someone can hold me accountable and say, Amie, this is what you said Flourishing Families was going to do. And I can show up to that hard conversation, or I can call on another leader and say, hey, we thought this was going to work and it's not. Can we together adjust the structure? I think that's critical.
Well, and you're practicing it in your work life so that you can then show up in the other piece of your work life with the families that you're supporting, right? Because it's the parallel. You can then do that with the families. You can be that base for them to come to you and say, hey, this isn't fair. This is frustrating. This is what's happening. And get those emotions out.
Mm-hmm.
And you can then show up in the same way with nurture. Yes, I hear that this is really hard. And here's what's happening with the structure piece on the other side as well, so that we are not holding them accountable, but, having them feel heard, but also keeping it real for them, because sugarcoating doesn't help either. That's too much nurture, right? So,
And I remember in our pre-conversation, you mentioning, a lot of people, when they think about Dr. Purvis, if you've been in the world of TBRI, you think of her sweet, syrupy, gentle connection. She was also the queen of correction. There's some videos out there where she is really holding a high bar for a child that she has established a relationship with, and they're trying to get out of that structure. And she's saying, I know it's hard. You can do it. I know it's hard. You can do it. And that's the other piece that's so critical is, yes, we have connection first, but correction does need to happen within our homes, within our workplaces, and within our systems. That's real. And saying it's hard and we can do it is also self-efficacy, right? We are capable. We believe that the adults in the room are capable of coming up with better solutions for the children that we're entrusted with.
I think the misconception is that that structure needs to be scary somehow. I think that there's this misunderstanding that if it's not scary, it's you're not holding someone accountable. You're not being firm enough. And at least in our world, that's not the case at all. You can be structured, just how you just gave that example, Amie, without being threatening, without being scary. And yeah, that would take us down a whole other rabbit hole today. But I'm really glad that you brought it up, and I think that it's just something for people to think about for sure. And how are we holding people accountable, and are we doing it in a way that's balanced, and in a way that people can hear us, especially our parents and caregivers who are in their back brain and trying to navigate their world with children in the systems. So, ladies, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I just want to do another plug for your Meet the Need conference taking place in December. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in South Carolina?
In Columbia, South Carolina. Registration is not yet open. We are just now finalizing our speakers, and it's going to be an incredible lineup.
Wonderful, wonderful. We will make sure to put that link in the show notes. I want to just thank you both for taking the time for chatting with me this morning. And I really encourage people to go check out the work that you're doing in South Carolina.